Your Honor, so
Yeah.
well, first of all, my motion is a motion for mistrial, based on the actions of the prosecutor. My objection initially to the item was that it contained hearsay. The state represented at the bench that it was not hearsay. There was no hearsay contained in it. We did not address the issue of what the state already knew, which is that there was a phone number attached to it that she was going to try to elicit testimony from this witness about who that phone number belonged to. That in and of itself is speculation, but it's certainly hearsay. The document can't authenticate. I believe the site for that proposition is Twiggs versus State. It's 315 Georgia Appeals 191. So this witness can't look at the document and say that it says this phone number is from Justin Cobb's Instagram or social media posting. This is who it belongs to. So that objection, I believe the objection was well founded. I believe the state purposely put that up there after misrepresenting as to whether or not it contained any hearsay in it. And based on that, I would move for mistrial.
May I respond?
You may.
The number and why it was significant to him in this investigation, where his steps and actions are being questioned.
But Judge, we don't get there. I hear what the state's saying, and it's disingenuous because we don't get to the second step that they're talking about, what records he procured and why he did what he did, unless we go through the hearsay statement that's contained in the portion that I objected to. And the court is accurate. I was there and I asked for everything that was on the right side, all of the verbiage to be. I said that was hearsay. The state said it was not. It clearly is, because to ask him that specific question, I mean, listen, none of us are obtuse here. It is what it is. I think that the state was disingenuous about it. The state's being very slippery in regards to their response to the court's questions. I think it's willful, and I think a mistrial is appropriate. And I'm asking.
I can't figure out what it is. If it's disingenuous, if it is that, I don't want to malign the prosecutor standing in front of me right now, so I'm not going to say the possible things that it could be, but it is baffling to me that somebody with the number of years of experience that you have, time after time after time, continues to seemingly purposefully hide the ball to the extent you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And I really don't want to believe that it is purposeful, but honestly, after a certain number of times, you start to wonder how it could be anything but that, unless it is just that you are so unorganized that you are throwing this case together as you try it. And I am sorry to say that, but this case is being made much more difficult for everybody because of the haphazard way in which it is being presented. I'm going to take a recess for a few.
My sleep last night.
A little bit. It was a late night. We didn't leave out of court until sometime after 6, maybe close to 7, and then Brian and I had to go and get Jeffrey from the Fulton County Jail and turn him over to his folks.
Oh my goodness.
And then some stuff to do back at the office. So yeah.
And what I am okay. So for everyone watching, we have all this adrenaline and energy, and what is the car ride? Are you in silence because you are taking in this moment? Or were you just were you in work mode still?
You mean after we got him out?
Yeah.
You know what? We're just kind of coming down. It was Brian and I were engaged in a lot of different emotions. We wanted to continue on with this trial because we felt like we were winning this thing. And, there's nothing better than a 2-word resolution at the end, of not guilty. But as always, it's the client's decision as to how to resolve it. And truth be told, Jeffrey is the one who's been sitting in the jail for the past 2.5 years. And so we were extremely excited that he was getting out. At the top of our priority for the past 2.5 years was bringing this man home. And so we were thrilled to be seeing him walk out of that Fulton County jail and go home. So it was an exciting moment. A little bit anticlimactic in that we really wanted to continue on trial, but that's okay. That's okay. This is a win.
Were you surprised by, well, actually, before we say that, can you explain a non-negotiated blind plea? And so sometimes being able to properly put context to things, especially when a lawyer can do it versus me not a lawyer, is always helpful. So if you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. So it's best to start by explaining what a negotiated plea is. Okay. A negotiated plea is where the state and the defense get together, and we hammer out what we're going to plead to, if we're going to plead to, under what circumstances, what the sentence is going to be, what conditions they're going to be, and we agree to it. And essentially, we put it up in front of the judge. What we've agreed to, and we're asking you to follow this recommendation. That's negotiated, and if the judge does it, that's good. It's over. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the state and the defense just can't reach common ground, and that was the case here. The truth is, we've not been on common ground since day one, and they've not been negotiating and dealing in good faith, and so there was never any way that we were going to come to any sort of consensus or agreement. And so a non-negotiated plea is where the state puts up their recitation and their recommendation and says, Judge, this is, if he's pleading guilty to these charges, this is what we want you to sentence him to. We would then make a plea to the court and say, we're pleading guilty, or we're pleading nolo, or whatever it is, and this is what we're asking you to do. And the judge makes the decision. And in a non-negotiated plea, the defendant does not have the right to withdraw his plea after the judge says what she's going to sentence him. Now, there's a caveat to that. So the state says, we want him to serve 20 years, and the defense says, we want probation. If the judge goes above 20 years and say, you know what, I'm going to accept the plea, but I think he needs 25 years, you can withdraw the plea. If it's above the state's recommendation, you can withdraw.
Oh, interesting.
But if the judge says anything in between where we are from probation to 20 years in that hypothetical, you cannot withdraw. And so there was a lot of angst here, not knowing exactly what the judge was going to do. But we've been watching how the court has ruled on motions, how the court has dealt with us and the state. And we thought that the judge had been fair in terms of his rules over the course of the past number of months since Judge Whitaker got on the case and then became the new arbiter, so to speak. So we felt as comfortable as you can feel letting her make the decision.
Wow.
It was a gamble.
Wow.
It was a gamble. And it was not a gamble without a lot of thought and a lot of back and forth. You probably saw that at one point the judge came on the bench and she said, okay, you guys ready to go? And there was just silence because Mr. Williams had not yet decided that he wanted to do it. We took a while, and then we came back and got it done.
Were you surprised? First of all, thank you for that clarification. There were a ton of questions about that. And of course, it's like legal social media, so no one was able to quite answer it. So that was really helpful. Were you surprised by the sentence that she gave? Because I think even in the proposal done by, you guys, it included, I think, house arrest and an ankle monitor, and I didn't see any of that in the disposition. And so were you surprised by the sentence?
Yes and no. And let me explain both of those. When we asked the court to entertain the plea and a sentence, we didn't want to come in front of the court and say, okay, just give information and that's it. Because you ask for something that's not reasonable, and then the judge just ignores you altogether, and you probably end up in a place you don't want to end up. So we wanted to put something in front of the court that had some meaning, that had some teeth, that assured the court and the community that Mr. Williams was accepting responsibility, right, and that he was holding himself to or asking to be held to a standard where he could make amends. And so we put some real conditions there. And frankly, some of those things are things that Jeffrey had always done anyway. The concerts, the benefits, donations to charitable organizations, he'd done that. So we didn't have a problem with that. So were we surprised? that the judge did what she did? Not necessarily. We weren't surprised because we'd seen how the judge had moved over the course of the past couple months. And to be honest, we know we're of the opinion that the judge was just kind of fed up with the state because she was able to see that they were operating in a way that really wasn't, in good faith. And so the recommendations that they made was silly. To walk into court admitting that earlier that day, you had put an offer on the table where he would go home today, but you had a million conditions attached to it, and then all of a sudden when we say, well, we're not comfortable with those conditions, all of a sudden you're asking the court 25 years in prison. But that's just silly, and it diminished their credibility, and I think enhanced ours.
One of the things that you're talking about, even just the switch from the previous judge, to Judge Whitaker, when Jeffrey was speaking, he talked about Judge Whitaker being the best thing to happen to this case in terms of fairness, which I think for many of us watching, we felt that, but to hear him say that, and I think for me, obviously, I can only speak for myself, it was just confirmation that, these guys are, obviously, these are their lives, they're obviously paying attention, and they recognize the weight and the severity of what's going on, and some may call it mistakes, some may call it intentional, but the things that were happening from the outside, it looks like an indication that these guys are a major part of this as well. Was that your experience?
That was absolutely my experience. Jeffrey has been amazingly involved in this case from the beginning. All right, I mean, we would meet often, and I mean often. We talk on the phone often. To say that we're in court all day long and then we still talk later on, it's surprising. But he was engaged. He knew everything. He knew all of the evidence. We went over it with him. He was able to offer his insight and his thinking on, strategy as well. So he was engaged. But more importantly, he was very much aware of how the court was handling this case. And, whether it was Jeffrey or any of the other defendants or attorneys, no one wanted the court to do anything special for us. Right? We just wanted it to be fair. And, for months and months, we're sitting there being hammered by dishonesty, by late disclosure of information, by purposefully doing things that any attorney should know you ought not to do, trying to influence ways, and we're sitting there, and all we're asking is for the court to address that. We didn't see that it was being addressed. We didn't feel as though it was properly being addressed. But then when Judge Whitaker took over the case, she was much more respectful of calendars and so forth, and she took things seriously, and she was a very smart judge. And whether you have any feelings about the judge's temperament, or people thought she might have been a little snippy, or deal with that, as long as the rulings are fair, and we found that to be the case.
To that point, there were a number of cross-examinations that I recapped and enjoyed, done by you for sure, but one of the moments that I remember distinctly is there was an exchange with the state. It was Judge Glanville and maybe it was even briansteel, and you walked up and you said, please do something, like, Judge, do something. We need you to do something. And so anyway, it's just what came to my mind as the things that have happened over the case. It said she lied. I think she outright said she lied.
Yeah, and she did.
And so seeing that for, again, all of the legal, non-legal scholars who have tapped in was just surprising. It really uncovered a lot of things. How do you feel about the social media? There's obviously like traditional media, but I think a lot of social media and new media is what we're calling it. This case, what is your thoughts about that? Or were you even tapped in? Did you even recognize all of that happening?
You know what? I was very much aware that there were a lot of people watching this thing on streaming, on social media, which is a good thing. I'm always of the opinion that the inside people have into the functioning of the better. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for folks to see how things work and sometimes how they don't work, what people are held to and whether they actually or not. And I think a lot of people saw that, and it was, I think that's a good thing. You know, it's from time to time, I would log on to the stream and just take a look at the chat, because sometimes you kind of want to see how the evidence is hitting. And I got to tell you, there's some hilarious people on that chat. But you've got to have a pretty strong sense of self, because there's also a lot of criticism going on that chat. And I've heard myself call everything on the chat, from Wesley Snipes to DMX to you name it. But people are very insightful, and I am, the millions of people who are watching now have a better understanding, I think, of how the system works, and that's a good thing.
Is there something you think should change as a result of this case?
Nothing that's not already in place. To be honest, people know how they're supposed to conduct themselves, attorneys. And prosecutors have a lot of power, and, their standards by which they're supposed to hold themselves, and their disclosures. Everyone knows what it is to try a case and try it fairly. And, no one asks for anything other than, let's just try the case fairly and let the chips fall where they may. And so I hope, my hope is that attorneys looking at this case see it for what it is, and that they maybe recognize that there's some things that they're doing that they could do better, and maybe they learn from it. I think they will. I mean, I've had dozens of attorneys that might reach out to me, in support, share some opinions, share some research. It's been very instructive, and it's been a great thing. I'm actually heading down to I'm on the state of Georgia State Bar Board of Governors. So I'm heading down to a meeting this weekend, and I expect I'll get an earful attorneys around the state. Hopefully mostly good, but if there's some criticism there, I'd love to hear it too. But we'll see.
Are you expecting to still show up some of the days in court? Because obviously Shannon is still left, and Diamante Kendricks as well. Can we expect to see you pop up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me say something. One of the best things out of this case, and it happened when I tried the Atlanta cheating scandal RICO case a number of years ago too. Is that you get close. You get close with the attorneys. And we were already close. I've known Max for a long time. He's a great attorney. I just met Doug Weinstein recently, but he's a fantastic guy, and we have worked together. We all made a pact that, look, we're going to help each other. No one was going to hurt anybody else, and that held true. And so anytime, I think you saw it. Anytime, it may not necessarily have had anything to do with our client, but if there was something going on that needed to be addressed, somebody could be counted on to jump up and jump in and say something. And that's going to continue. So I'm be down there. If Max needs some help, I'll be in there helping him. If Doug needs some help, same thing. If they send me a text here in the office, say I need a case to stand for this proposition, hell, I'm going to drop what I'm doing and find that case and email it over to them. So they're not alone. And the other thing that they're saying as well, I don't know how people feel about the clients, the defendants. People may have their opinion based on what they've heard about, Shannon or Diamante or anybody else. But we've gotten to know these guys. You can't spend that amount of time with people without recognizing them for the people, persons that they are. I like all of these guys. I really do. And so I'm vested in their success.
Okay, my last question. Can we wait to see you at the first Young Thug concert?
Absolutely. That have some backstage passes too.
Yeah.
If that boy know like I know. I know, you know what? There's another Keith Adams floating around, my son, Keith Adams Jr. And he has already put in his request.
I love it.
He is the biggest Young Thug fan. And so Keith Adams is floating around at the next Young Thug concert. So definitely. Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. I'll definitely, be continuing to stay on this case, making my daily recaps. I'm just as invested in the outcome for sure. So thank you again. I appreciate this.
You're welcome. Please continue doing what you're doing. You do a fantastic job. I'm very impressed with the production that you do and your coverage and.
Thank you.
I think I said it before in an email, but I really do mean it, that you're doing a tremendous service, and you do it very well. So congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing. Take care, baby girl. Take care of your family. And
Yes.
if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, okay?
I will. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You as well. Bye-bye.
All right.
All right. I've got just a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind, about what you observed that evening. Actually, morning, because it was about a little bit after 12 midnight when this incident occurred. Is that about right?
Correct.
So we're talking January the 8th of 2015, about 12:38 in the morning. Does that sound about correct?
Correct.
And if you need to, for purposes of time or for your report that you have in front of you, right?
Sure, yes.
Feel free to do so. All right. So you're with APD, but you're working an extra job location, right?
Yes.
And 12:38 in the morning, you hear some shots. Turns out to be about maybe 4 or 5 shots that you hear.
About 5.
6. You're a police officer. You know a gunshot?
Yes.
All right. And then you see this burgundy reddish Infiniti that we've seen a picture speeding down the driveway or the street inside of the complex. 2 folks get out.
Yes.
Rear Larry Hughes. You don't know them,
No, I don't at the time.
but they go into a unit there in the apartment complex, and then they come back out. You have a conversation with them.
Correct.
All right. During the course of your investigation, you come to find out that that their car appeared to have been shot at. Right?
Correct.
In fact, you were able to look at the car and observe some damage to the vehicle itself.
Correct.
Later, or as you conduct the investigation, you come to realize that there's another vehicle, I think a black Acura, that has some damage to it as well. True?
Correct.
Right. One of the point is who shot at him, what was going on, correct?
That's correct.
I'll end up asking, well, first of all, the other officers arrive at the scene?
It was just myself, Officer McGee, and another officer just brought crime scene tape, that's all.
Okay. But you would have advised either those officers or other officers anything to be on the lookout for, right?
Yes, I should have, yes.
Things that you wanted the other officers to look out for was a white or silver Dodge Charger, correct?
Yes, that's in the report.
Right. And it's in your report because you were aware, or you became aware during the course of your investigation, the silver or white Dodge Charger was the vehicle that was firing on the burgundy Infiniti, correct?
Presumably, yes.
You would soon thereafter, go out to the front of the complex where you would see, and either you would collect or crime scene, the crime scene arrive on the scene?
Yes.
All right. They would collect the 6 shell casings that you found near the front gate. How those shell casings were?
According to the report, 45 caliber.
Okay. So you have some 45 caliber shell casings, and it's during your investigation that someone was shooting a 45 at that burgundy.
That's true.
And you had a description of an individual, a black male, who got out of the white Dodge Charger and was shooting at the vehicle, right?
According to the report, yes.
Just one person.
Yes, that's all I can remember from reading.
Okay. So what you know and what you then communicate to investigators is that there's a shooting that occurred at Trestle Tree, right? That's one. Someone shooting at this burgundy Infiniti, right?
Correct.
The person doing the shooting would have been a black male coming out of a white or silver Dodge Charger.
That's correct.
And then leaving the scene.
Yes.
I want to hone in specifically on your training, right?
Sure.
I heard you say that you've given a presentation about gangs but I'm asking you about gangs and specifically rap music and rap lyrics as it relates to gangs. What is this presentation that you've given, and are there any literature? Is there literature or any material that you have that you can share with us that you've used in this presentation?
I don't have the presentation with me, but it's my own accumulation of entertainment, music, and presenting. I present to kids, I present to adults and other cops, and educating them in the gang unit. A lot of officers don't understand what's happening right before their eyes, and so for myself, tasked with educating not only departments, when I work for the ATF, information.
Have you used either yourself or other investigators in regards to the relationship to rap and rap lyrics to gangs?
You mean, when you say literature, you mean like books, or are you talking about magazines?
I'm talking about books, I'm talking about learning treatises, I'm talking about studies, anything like that.
Training materials.
None of it.
No.
Magazines, we might use any hip-hop magazine or different examples that's in a magazine might be something that we are able to reference because of the wording or something and all that. When you reference books, I've read different gang books from other officers. I've read a book out of Compton. I think it's A Lonely Day in Compton or something, and it was written by gang detectives out of Compton, because a lot of they were privy to a lot more information than we were in their own work over the years.
Right, and what specific information? Here's what I'm trying to get to, Detective.
Sure.
I'm really not trying to trick you or anything.
Okay.
But I want to know specifically, is there a book, is there a training manual that specifically deals with rap lyrics as it relates to gangs?
No.
Okay. You referenced before, I think you used the words, my own background is used to decipher this information. You talked about movies. Mm-hmm. So are we talking simply about you looking at the movie Menace to Society? Yes.
I've seen it, yes.
Right. Looking at the movie Boys in the Hood?
Yes.
And you're saying that is what you have used to form your expertise in regards to rap lyrics and the relationship between rap lyrics and gangs?
What I'm saying is, based on my own upbringing, growing up in a gang-infested environment, my own education, my own training, as well as watching these said movies, is where I formulated my opinion.
Have there, other than what you yourself have experienced in your own personal life, right, have there been any, for example, instructors, professors, or anyone who taught you using material or lesson plan in regards to the relationship between rap lyrics?
No.
Okay, no?
No.
All right. Those are all the questions I have. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
It's Sergeant Johnson, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Keith Adams. I've got just a couple questions for you because you were there that day, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your observations from that day. Okay.
Okay.
Now, and if I'm going to recount some of your testimony and make sure I got this correct. So I hear that you've been with APD. I think you said 17 years, right?
Yes.
You were a gang investigator at some point. True.
Yes.
You were with the FBI at some point.
Yes.
You were detailed to ATF, if I heard you correctly.
Yes.
All right. You were familiar, at least on February the 7th of 2020, this guy named Christian Eppinger.
Yes.
And so received notification or a call about the fact that APD officers were looking for Mr. Eppinger. You decided to go and assist. Officer asked for help.
Yes.
Okay. And what you knew when you were going down there to assist was that there was a warrant out for the arrest of this guy, Mr. Eppinger, right?
Yes.
Now, although you've been in the gang unit, it wasn't what you knew about him being wanted was that he was wanted for an armed robbery that he was alleged to have committed. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the offense that you were aware that you were going to list in apprehending him for?
Yes.
Okay. And I heard you testify that you got down to the Chevron down at 221 Cleveland, and that is where you first saw Mr. Eppinger.
Yes.
He was by himself.
No, there was a group of probably 8 to 10 people at that gas station.
He was standing in front of the store.
Yes.
Okay. And at some point he walked away from the store, and you saw that.
Yes.
Okay. And he walked away by himself. And so the video, or if you didn't see the video, you mentioned seeing him interact, is your word, with someone at the gate going into the complex. True?
Yes.
All right. And I think I saw this correctly, and maybe your memory's better than mine, but it was pretty empty out there that day on the streets.
In the apartment complex?
In the apartment
Yes.
complex, right.
Yes.
And in fact, the last video that we saw, the only one that you were shown, where we're looking down that driveway, we see your vehicle, and we see the interaction at the far end. You don't see anyone else out there in the complex, do you?
No.
Okay. And so, in fact, when you see him, Eppinger interact with this guy at the front gate, he walks off, and you're still watching him after that. Is that right?
Yes.
Other officers were called in, and they were coming in to effect the arrest for this robbery that he was charged with, right?
Yes.
Okay. They weren't coming to arrest him for any sort of, well, strike that. Let me ask you a tighter question. When you pulled in behind Officer Rogers. You had a good view of everything that was going on.
Yes.
And it is fair and accurate to say that Officer Rogers got out of his car and tried to apprehend Mr. Eppinger.
Yes.
Mr. Eppinger resisted.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Eppinger seemed like he didn't want to, he certainly wasn't getting down on the ground. Correct? He was by himself, though, at that time.
Correct.
Right? There wasn't anyone around him.
No.
There wasn't anyone who seemed to be advising him to do anything. Right? There wasn't anyone who was helping him with anything that he himself, by himself, was doing on that day, at that moment.
Correct.
Okay. And so when you saw him fire and shoot at Officer Rogers, who was just doing his job, Mr. Eppinger, he doing that all by himself on his own. True?
Yes, Christian Eppinger fired the gun by himself.
And then you got out, you engaged, because you see this guy who is obviously committing a crime, firing on one of your officers, and you intended to make sure he was no longer a threat. He wouldn't hurt your officer anymore. He wouldn't hurt you. He needed to be taken into custody, right?
Correct.
And he fired back at you.
Correct.
And then he ran off. In the video, he runs around the corner from where you are. Is that accurate?
Yes.
There doesn't appear to be anyone who's helping him or soliciting him or aiding him to get away. He's doing all this all by himself.
At the time, I didn't know.
Okay. Well, there wasn't anyone else around, right?
Oh, no.
Okay. Naturally, you stayed and you assisted and rendered aid to Officer Rogers, correct?
Yes.
And other officers came in and ultimately ended up effecting the arrest and arresting Mr. Eppinger.
Yes.
Okay. Sergeant.
And let me ask you, based on your training and your 10 years with the gang unit, what are some of the ways that gang members increase status within their gang?
Again, he's not been qualified. He's not qualified to answer this question.
Sustained. How many years of training have you had as a member of the gang unit?
Throughout my time in the gang unit, we trained almost weekly. We have weekly meetings, intel meetings, information meetings. We have formal training, probably amassed 100 hours or so of formal gang training.
And did you also get on the job training just being...
Question to the leading question.
I'm gonna allow that.
Did you also training just based on your work within the gang unit?
Yes.
And based on some of your training, did you learn how gang members will try to increase their status within the gang?
Yes.
And what are some of those ways that gang members?
I'm going to object again. Calls for expert testimony. He's not been qualified. We've not been given notice of any such. And so I would object to him being allowed to answer any of these questions.
Based on his knowledge, training, and experience.
Overruled.
What are some of the ways that gang members increase their status within a gang?
Typically through violence and getting money through illicit means.
And when you say do violence, is shooting an act of violence?
Yes.
And specifically shooting at a cop, is that an act of violence?
Yes.
All right, any recross?
Sergeant Johnson, are you only just now that Christian Eppinger, when he was about to be arrested by this officer, that he shot officer just to increase his status in the gang and to get money for the gang? Is that your testimony?
No.
Okay.
It's not either or it's not both. It could be either or. In this situation, I would say the violence isn't increasing your status in the gang.
Or it could be just someone who was trying to get away from the police, right?
Yeah, could be.
And in fact, you're not in, I mean, I don't know Christian Eppinger. You don't know him either. You're not in his mind, are you?
No, I'm not in his mind.
Right. What you do know is that you see him in this parking lot by himself, right?
When he leaves the group of 8 to 10 people at 221 Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm not asking you about 221 people, and I just asked you about the apartment complex. He's by himself, right?
Objection, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Durante Beebe.
Yes.
The picture that you were shown, the video, where was Durante Beebe in that video?
In the surveillance video, he wasn't in it.
There, right?
No.
Okay. And so when you see Mr. Eppinger and he shoots, he runs by himself, right?
Yes.
Okay. You hear him? Did you listen to the any of the videos, the body cameras, the dash cam, any of that?
No, I haven't had any audio.
Okay. While you were there and you saw this going on, and you saw him trying to get away from Rogers and shooting at Rogers, you hear him shout out anything like, "Hey, this."
No.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because he didn't do that, did he?
Well, it's ridiculous. I don't think anybody would shoot a cop and then say this is for YSL. That's not how this works.
Right, right. And what is also ridiculous is you trying to determine that he was doing something that day to increase his status or to get money, right?
I'm not
Objection, argumentative. Sustained.
Bottom line is, problem here is you go to assist an arrest, and Officer Rogers tries to arrest him, and this guy shoots Officer Rogers, right?
Yes.
That's all.